The following preview was begrudgingly approved for all audiences.
You're listening to Elevator Music.
Welcome back to Forward Thinking, presented by the PCL. I'm Ricky Vellante, and I'm joined by my co-host, David West. In this episode, we're going to start off looking at some of the attitudes that exist within the leadership of college sports and the issues that result from that.
We'll also be joined by my former teammate, the great, the incomparable Andre Iguodala. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks. Hey, thanks for joining us today. We're gonna talk about something that, from our standpoint in the PCL, we talk about challenging, sort of the traditional college model. It's not just about challenging the framework and sort of the structure of the game. It's also challenging the attitudes and the mindsets of folks that are in college, in the college environment, that have say-so and means of control, and in a lot of cases have power. And it's really taking a look at the mindsets of some of these people. And I think it's very interesting that during this coronavirus, I think we've seen this in other aspects of life and society, people are really showing the shittier side of themselves. Very vapid and very non-nuanced in a way that, we've heard people complain about, being in isolation. We've heard people complain about not being able to, keep themselves cool, calm, and collected, sort of understand the larger picture. And then we're also starting to see and hear, again, I think some of the more true felt, ideas and opinions of some of these folks. And like this week or last week, we heard some comments from some college coaches. And right now I want to take the time, I want to read you the quote from Oklahoma State's football coach, Mike Gundy. And we're going to discuss this because, again, I think, regardless of what this quote is, and it is a powerful quote in terms of it shows just how despicable some of these folks think and how despicable their minds are. It also, I think, gives us a good context to just have this general conversation or a broader conversation about where the state of college sports is and why we don't see significant change in these college sports and in these college arenas is mainly because of the attitudes that some of these folks maintain and carry. So he went on to say that this week, NCAA, the president of universities, the Power 5 conference commissioners, the athletic directors need to be meeting right now, and we need to start coming up with answers. I almost can't read this without going into a deep southern country Mississippi type accent. But the Oklahoma State head coach said inside a near hour-long teleconference that included a 20-minute monologue to start off, in my opinion, okay, there goes my country accent again, we need to bring our players back. They are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds, and they are healthy, and they have the ability to fight this virus off. If that is true, then we sequester them and continue because we need to run money through the state of Oklahoma, end quote. And so just listening to that, we wanted to get into it. I wanted to throw that to you, Ricky, because he's not the only one. There's some other coaches that are saying some things. But I think it speaks to, particularly when you start talking about, in his opinion, and what we need to do with these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-olds that are healthy and can fight off the virus. I think it has some really nasty racial undertones. And I think, again, it's just more broadly the sense of sort of the attitudes and sort of some of the opinions that these folks think and how they feel about some of these athletes and, the young people that they have a considerable amount of power and influence over.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising to me. This is certainly nothing new coming from him. It shows that, in his opinion, these players are chattel. They're almost his property. They're gonna do what he says when he says to do it. The fact that He feels the economy of Oklahoma is more important than, the bodies and health of his players. Again, this is nothing new to the college sports space. You've got Mike Leach, who tweets that, after 2 weeks or 3 weeks of isolation, and includes a picture of an older white woman knitting a noose. Remind you, he is now the coach of Mississippi State, so that geographically has some pretty significant meaning to it.
Right.
And for the school to step in and say that we're going to reprimand him, and part of that reprimand is to attend a civil rights museum.
Right, it's patronizing.
Yeah, it really shows the racial undertones that still exist on a lot of these campuses, exploiting, in particular, Black athletes to fund these college sport economies, to ensure the budgets are taken care of. Football and basketball, which overall, I think football is about 54% Black athletes, whereas basketball is a little higher. It's closer to 57%. But then when you look at like starters versus bench players, the numbers start to go way, way higher, where, a university like Auburn or Alabama will have 80+% of their football team will be Black, yet of the general student population, less than 3% is Black. And again, it just goes to show the attitudes that some of these universities have towards not only athletes, but just, the race in general. And then you have Dabo Sweeney, who's talking about, using a private jet to go down to Florida right now, and saying, at the time last week that he may do it again for Easter weekend. And his attitude was, well, the plane was clean, so everybody's okay.
And his attitude was also, I've been blessed. I've been extremely blessed, and I'm not going to apologize for being blessed,
Yeah, it shows a significant difference. I think, later in the episode when everybody's going to get to hear from Andre, he was almost embarrassed in a way to say, like, things are going well for me right now. So it shows the sort of the difference between that humble attitude of a guy that's working hard and doing good things versus a Dabo Sweeney, where it's like, dude, you're only getting paid this much because the labor's unpaid. That is the only reason it creates inflation.
And it's the sense of contempt that we know that, no matter what they say, we know this, in your words, again, in your actions, you harbor this deep down contempt for these players that are actually generating a tremendous amount of wealth, a tremendous amount of income for everyone but themselves.
And I think like Mike Leach, for whatever reason, the media loves him, and it annoys me to no end, because this is by no means the first time that he's done something like this. I think back last season when he berated his players in the media that they were out, overweight and out of shape, and that was their fault. Mind you, he's the coach that sets the routine and the schedule for every single practice. Number two, back when he was at Texas Tech, and I forget the quarterback that suffered a concussion, but then he essentially locked him in an outhouse for him to recover from it and get tougher. So again, this attitude of you're only valuable to me as long as you're healthy and as long as you're doing what I'm saying is a really toxic attitude to have for a group of individuals that essentially control the future for these athletes.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. They have so much, they have a significant amount of influence and power over these guys and over their lives. And, I remember, as a player, I've said this before, the perspective that you have, right? Clear perspective is like the enemy of the athlete, because what, Mike Gundy was alluding to is something that isn't talked about in sports a whole lot. And what it is that athlete is supposed to be loyal to the sport in all facets of the sport. And there's nothing that sort of gets in the way of the sport. No weather, no human circumstance, death in the family, none of that stuff gets in the way of this sort of pursuit for and to be good or great in the sport. And it's as if again, these athletes are supposed to just completely forget about their families, completely disregard their own safety, completely disregard their own ability to, read and absorb information for themselves, because some of them are reading and understand exactly what the climate is, understand exactly how dangerous things are. And then they've got the pressure of their coach saying, hey, someone, again, who has great power and influence over them, saying, hey, you guys should be back on campus playing, working, making people money. That's in essence what he said. And
Yeah. You could picture this dude in a linen suit on the porch of a plantation. Like,
right. I mean, it just
that wouldn't seem out of character if you were to just read what they said in that context.
right, exactly. That's why I said I can't read the quote without sort of reverting to some kind of Southern, backwoods Southern accent, because that's what it literally sounds like. And I just, again, I think it's an insult to players, because again, as someone who considered himself to be a more thoughtful and engaged athlete through my career, I've always longed for people to respect that part of me, right? The fact that, yeah, I've got the sports stuff going on, but I respect the fact that I can pick up the newspaper, that I can read a news article, and I understand just as well as you do what's going on in society. And I think it's very dangerous what some of these coaches are implying to these very impressionable young men who ultimately are going to become, influencers and dads and husbands and everything else. And they're being influenced by people and have power wielded over them by people who, in my opinion, just don't, like, if the coach is telling you that, yeah, he's healthy enough, and hell, if he gets the virus, he's healthy enough to fight it off, that person doesn't really care about you, the level and the way that they should. And I think it's evident. And like I said, this coronavirus, we've seen people who are been self-serving and complaining and things like that, who are very, very fortunate, as we know, who not only in this country but around the world being affected at a tremendous rate. And then we have these privileged, highly paid, highly compensated college coaches, again, because they aren't in control, they aren't able to sort of get things the way that they want them, have things go as they think they should. They're actually being the wrong kind of example for the young people that they have under their control.
And it's not just something that's limited to the men's game. I think back to a video I saw posted to ESPN's Instagram account from Gino Auriemma, women's basketball coach at UConn, talking about how instead of looking at the on-court product when he would go back and watch film, that he would instead watch the faces of his players on the bench to determine, based off their facial expressions and their attitude and their how they were carrying themselves on the bench, that would determine who would get minutes in future games.
Wow. That's that I had never heard that. That's surprising because, particularly coming from a Hall of Fame coach, because that's something that I think has got to be very careful in that, because what is he saying? That he just wants people on the bench cheering and happy to be cheering? I mean, there's one thing to be rooting your teammates on, but basing basically how someone looks on the bench and judging whether or not that will translate or be able to impact you in the game, I think is not a strategy that I've seen work, particularly in my professional career, because I know that there are guys who, again, you want people to be angry and ornery and a little on edge about not playing, right? Because you want people chomping at the bit to get in the game. You want people who are antsy about playing and wanting to contribute. So you don't necessarily want a jovial. And when I was with the Warriors, man, we had a good time, but we all wanted to play. We all wanted to get on the floor and contribute. And we're waiting for our number to get called so we can get on the floor.
Yeah, I think back to looking at your body language on, like you and JaVale and some of the guys on the Warriors bench, and then you got Kendrick Perkins over on the Cavs bench. If we were strictly going off of body language, the reaction would mostly just be, I'm terrified of those guys.
Right.
So again, it's all about that gatekeeper mentality that some college coaches have, a lot of college coaches have, that if you're not doing exactly what I'm telling you to do,
Right.
I'm not giving you access.
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple in the fact that, when you look at, and obviously I think football is a bit different because football it's very hard to get away from some of the structural and institutional mechanisms that, even if they try to shift these conversations away, the way in which they go about treating their players, the way in which the combine is run. I've seen all types of, symbolism that people have tried to connect to the NBA draft, hell, the NFL draft, the NFL combine, all these different things. And I think that what we're talking about is having an awareness that these things go on. And ultimately, some of these coaches have these gaffes and these hiccups because they are completely unaware, right? They don't have the awareness of what they're saying. Or maybe they do. Maybe I'm just being naive and saying that they aren't aware. But I would like to think that it's an unawareness because they haven't had to be aware, right? Like you haven't had to be aware of how racially insensitive you may sound, right? Ever, because you've never had to bear the brunt. Nobody's ever, held your foot to the fire on it, or, young players in the world that you're in, certain attitude that you carry actually has gotten you up the ladder, has gotten you opportunity after opportunity. So I think that's where we help in the conversation, or we add to the conversation, because what we're saying is you need to have an awareness of these things so that the context that you're shaping is the proper one for these young athletes, like I said, who you have considerable influence and power and control over.
Yeah, well, it's an important discussion to have, and I hope people continue to have it because an atmosphere of accountability is needed. In a lot of cases, these coaches are the highest paid state employees in their respective states, and they're representing not just themselves. They're representing the university, they're representing the state, and to allow the universities to let these coaches go sort of unchecked, again, creates a really poor look for college sports as a whole.
Right. Thank you guys for joining us again. Very special guest, former teammate of mine, 3-time NBA champion, 16-year NBA veteran, one of the brightest, sharpest guys I've ever played with, guy who's got a genuine, legit, perspective on the world and people. Andre Iguodala, thank you for joining Forward Thinking. Appreciate you, brother. How's everything?
It's good, man. Thanks for having me on, man. Really looking forward to, I always look forward to having thought-provoking conversations. And it's been an interesting time that we're in right now, as I'm sure we're going to dive into, but just in terms of what's been going on with people. And I got a pretty interesting perspective on, how should we be spending our time right now? What should we be doing? And for me, it's always like making the most of the time.
Right.
We were, our time with the Warriors, we had one of the guys who trained some of the Navy guys, and he was always prime work, crush space. That was the motto. I always say it to my son. So every day I wake up, it's all right, what can we tackle today? And then when I go to bed, it's okay, what did I miss? What could I have got done that I couldn't get done? And so that's kind of been in the mind state I've been in. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation and just getting some thoughts out there.
Right, absolutely. It's a difficult time for everybody dealing with this coronavirus, pandemic. It's affecting the entire globe. You and I have had some conversations about it. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, and what was your feeling when you first heard the news that something like this was on the way, and then ultimately how did you respond with hearing that the NBA season would be put on hold?
Right. So it was interesting because I've had an interesting year in terms of not being with the Memphis Grizzlies, who I was employed by for a period of time. But I was at home here in the Bay, and I was actually working from home. I recently got a second job with Comcast Ventures on my tech side and some of the investing that I do. So my routine is pretty set in terms of the news I intake. So I'm intaking a lot of news. And I was listening to Bloomberg Radio and they were talking about the coronavirus, and this was like in January. So they were talking about how the doctor in China actually spoke out about it, who ended up dying of it. He was actually trying to get it out to all the world doctors that this was something that was going on. They actually kind of hid it, like they didn't want him to say anything.
Right.
So this was in January, and I was hearing about it, and it's actually interesting because, you know, we have our own little bubble here in America where we're like, oh man, they got some crazy stuff going on over there. Not thinking that it's gonna hit us over here. And it's
Right.
like the way the information is working and the times we're in now, it's like information is spread easy, but we still live in that bubble where we don't know how certain things can affect us. And it's right there. They're telling us that it's coming.
Right.
Just always think about that. And then like you look at fast forward to March and we're in the game and the referee asked me a question like, yo, did you just hear something? Like, what's going on? And it was funny because someone on the bench, by the bench, told me like, yo, they just had a call. The game in OKC just got shut down. So we in like the third quarter. Like that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I get back on the court and the ref said, what you hear? I'm like, yo, I heard they about to shut this thing down. He was like, yeah, I heard the same thing too.
Wow.
I'm like, whoa. So at that point, like, we lose the game, and it was like nobody even thinking about the game. We in the game, like,
Right,
yo,
right.
Jesus shut down.
Right.
It's like how you running the play, and you like, man, it's over.
Right.
So
Right.
that was really interesting. And then what was really interesting from there is just kind of like how everybody would move, like what would like tomorrow look like or the next day look like,
Right.
because you keep it in mind and like this is something that's serious, but at the same time, we live in this profession, it's business as usual, right? So
Right.
so they like, we pride ourselves on being in tip-top shape, so we gonna have the workouts ready. You know, nothing's mandatory, but we keep it in shape.
Right. Right.
So you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like, all right, cool. Like we're routine oriented, so it's like, let's get back in the gym, let's keep in shape, let's be ready to go when it get back up and popping. And then, because with the Heat, they're very in tune with what's going on and making sure that guys are up to date. So they're giving us all the information. Like we had like 2 or 3 rundowns on the coronavirus leading up to that. So like we know everything we think we're supposed to know. So, you know, but then all of a sudden, like, I'm on the board with the union and it's looking like, yo, we're about to shut this thing down. Like in 2 weeks, it might be shut down for 2 weeks. That's what we're thinking. So I'm like, yo, let me get back to my kids to see them for a hot second and then jump back. So I heard them get home. Before you know it, they like, nah, this thing shut down. Yeah.
Once I heard that the NBA was stopping, I think that's when it became real for me because, you know, being in the league for all those years, like you said, business as usual is what we're used to, like snowstorm, thunderstorm, rain, it don't matter. You going up in that plane and you're going to get to the next city. They not going to, I mean, even when I was in Indiana, there were like some monster snowstorms, but we still played the game. We still got to the arena, still played the game. When I realized that they were shutting the league down and then, you know, I'm close with TJ. So then I think I text you and I'm like, yo, y'all staying in the city? And then I text TJ. He was like, nah, they said we got to go home. I'm like, oh, it's real. Like once I knew guys were going back to their homes and were able to leave the city of the teams that they're on, I knew it was going to be tough.
Yeah. I mean, I think because that was a little bit about in terms of, you know, what were the thoughts of management? Like, okay, what's management thinking right now? You know, like, should guys leave the city? Should they go home? And then I think it got to a point where it was like, listen, man, this thing kind of shut down. If you got kids, you know, that was what's most important. So I'm one of the few guys that live outside of Florida with kids, so I had to get back home. I'm with the kids now.
And so, Andre, you mentioned that, you know, this off season while you were on season and during the season, you've been working with Catalyst Fund. Something we'd like to talk about on Forward Thinking is recognizing those that are bringing about impact off the court. You know, this week, Earl Graves, founder of Black Enterprise, passed away, unfortunately. But talking a little bit more about Catalyst Fund and how you all are focusing on African-American, Latinx, and female entrepreneurial founded companies to empower them and provide them with the funding necessary to get off the ground.
Well, it's interesting when you look at Silicon Valley, the tech sector, everything is analytics. You know, everything is analytically broken down and to be the most efficient, accurate in any sector when you apply tech to it. But what's interesting is when you break down the influence, or you break down when you have women on your board, or you have a woman CEO or a woman in a high position, the statistics show, the analytics show that your company has more success or is bringing in more income or it's a higher return on your investment. So with all these numbers out there, you'd be surprised that there's still a lack of proper funding for entrepreneurs in those we call it underrepresented communities, which is women, African American, and Latinx founders. So we see that as something that we're looking forward to helping these companies grow and grow healthy growth and responsible growth. As you can see how the growth gets out of hand, and before you know it, there's a lot of irresponsible things going on. You talk about Cambridge Analytica and what they're doing with all the data, all those things. So all that stuff comes to mind. But at the end of the day, I think we're not only just trying to do right, but it makes sense all across the board. Just doing right by your people. Everything's for financial reasons. Not shouldn't say everything, but the majority of things are for financial gain. But when you look at the numbers, you should put money in those areas anyway, because those are the ones that are having the most influence on things that are like just the way the world's moving.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's, we've seen it in the last few weeks, and I'm curious to see how Catalyst Fund is handling everything that's going on. But companies that arguably scaled up too quickly that are now, in significant, whether it's layoffs for furloughs, whatever the case might be, but they're in cost cutting mode now, or just closing down their doors altogether. But, as part of your role with the Catalyst Fund and what you do, curious to see or to hear the guardrails you all like to make sure are in place, and what type of companies you identify, or the particular sectors or industries that you're more focused on than others. Curious to hear all that.
Yeah, we're very stage agnostic, where we can invest in any different stages, but the majority of our funding comes early as possible. You talk about pre-seed, seed, Series A funding, and we like to lead rounds. You look at the different sectors, you have the enterprise and you have the consumer side, and we're probably about 70, we're more on the consumer side, 70% on the consumer, 30% on the enterprise side. But any opportunities we see, companies that are very disruptive, companies that can scale, companies with that can build large communities, those are the type of companies that we're looking forward to. You look at Comcast Ventures as a whole is a $500 million fund, and with Catalyst, the Catalyst fund is around a $30 million fund. So we have a lot that we bring to the table as well as a company. As you know, we're under the larger Comcast umbrella, which is also owns Sky Network and Telemundo. So when I'm down in Miami, and we're having deal meetings on Mondays, I have access to the Telemundo studios, and I can go in here, Zoom from there, and have an office space in there. So a very large conglomerate. We have an accelerator program called the Forecast Labs, which is pretty interesting, and where we help companies with branding, getting their name out there, with marketing, getting them at cost ad spend. I believe it's one of the largest media spenders in the world, being Comcast. Obviously, it's the cable company. So you see a lot of our portfolio companies and a lot of different commercials on a lot of different channels, depending on the demographic they're trying to go after. And there's always also a direct mail we have in place with UPS, a partnership where we get you direct mail with advertisements as well at cost. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And I think we just go about it a really smart way. I work with some really smart minds. It's like I'm a spokesperson for them now. But just it's like a real full-time job, and that's what I try to explain to a lot of guys in the league. It's like, listen, like it's just not like just for show or just to stamp something next to my name. Like, hey, I work with this company. It's like, nah, I was on a call earlier today. An hour call this morning, looking at a company, a bright entrepreneur. He did another company as well, 2 other companies that he did well with. So my days have been full. It's like it hasn't slowed down at all. Like people are. Like I've been blessed, and it's kind of like I've been nervous to say it. People are like, how you doing? And I'm kind of reluctant to say like I'm actually doing really good. Like, cause you don't want to say that. But at the same time, I'll just try to make the most of my time, make the most of my days, and just, find the work, crush the space.
So is this something, you as David mentioned in the opening, you're a very cerebral guy, forward thinker. Was this something that you found when you got to Golden State that just was of interest, given your proximity to Silicon Valley, or was this something in Denver or even before that was on your radar?
Yeah, it was before. It's actually, I've always been curious, and math is my favorite subject in school. So like numbers have always like resonated with me. Like I just look at numbers and then kind of like you nerd out a little bit. So that's always been there. But when you become a professional athlete, there's a lot of people don't understand in terms of the background you come from, and then financial education or lack thereof that you've had throughout your life. Like, you have no idea what it's like to actually have that amount of wealth or that amount of income coming in. And if you've never been taught how to handle it, then how do you handle it? You know, I was just trying to explain to somebody that at the golf course, they didn't understand. I was like, well, where'd you grow up? He was like, I grew up down the street. It's that Olympic Golf Club. It's like a 10,000 person wait list just to get in, like waiting to get in.
Right.
And he said, I grew up down the street. I was like, what did your mother do for a living? And she was like, she said she's a banker. I'm like, so imagine if your dad's Michael Jordan, you know everything about basketball, right? He said, correct. I said, your mom's a banker. She knows everything there is to know about finances. So it comes natural to him, and it was easy for him. And that's why he didn't understand. It's like, if I asked him a basketball question, he wouldn't have a clue. So just trying to just give people to understand the parallels of, it's very easy for an athlete to fail when it comes to finances. And it's because no one has given us, you know, systematically, it isn't set it up for us to have success when it comes to finances. So for me, I was always curious, and I always wanted to be different. I didn't want to be identified as a basketball player. And that's from like 6th, 7th grade. Like, I was really good at basketball at a young age from where I'm from. Didn't know I'd make to the NBA, but I still wanted to separate myself, because you saw a common theme when you saw a basketball player. You know, he wasn't the smartest. He didn't do well in school. He didn't speak so well. He can only communicate with a certain crowd of people. And, you know, I realized people looked at me a certain way, or I had teachers say certain things to me at like a young age. So I always wanted to separate myself. So I took pride in just trying to learn as much as possible, and kind of like, you take it as first, it's like trying to prove someone wrong. And then you just learn that, you know, that's just something I enjoy, with just learning. So coming into the league, I took that, I just always had it, and said, all right, I'm trying to find the best financial advisor, right? So, you know, you don't know what that looks like. So you find one person, it's like, okay, this person's not teaching me anything, because I'm coming into these meetings a little bit nervous, like, all right, you're just showing me my spreadsheet. You're saying, all right, the portfolio is up 1-2%, or it's down 1-2%, or it's up 10%. These are regular fees. Like, how do you know what a regular fee looks like? So just always doing homework and just reading, asking a lot of questions to outside people. And before you know it, you know, you are who you hang around. You know, it's just the law of attraction. You know, if that's what you're into, you just attract people with that knowledge. So have some good friends, asking the right questions, and just gaining knowledge, fire that financial advisor, then you might hire another one. Then you find them doing something wrong, you hire another, until you just build a team. And then I just eventually built a team. And what I try to do with other team I built was say, hey, listen, you hold me accountable. Like, if I don't get smarter, or know these acronyms, or knowing what's going on in the stock market, or, you know, or if I don't grow financially in my mind, I'm blaming you, and I'm going to find someone else. So I just got around to people that held me accountable, gave me the right material to read, and then from there, just try to keep moving it forward. So I ended up, long story short, I ended up investing in the E-Trade account on my own, and I found myself getting a good return on some tech stocks. So from there, you dive deeper after you in the public markets, and it's like, okay, I'm having success here. How can you go deeper into it? And you start learning about the private markets, which is something I never heard of. And then that led me, perfect timing, signed with the Golden State Warriors, and boom, you know, the whole world opens up.
So from the outside looking in, it feels like your and David's generation of players has created an atmosphere within the NBA that allows for people to be a little more interested in what's going on off the court in a meaningful way. Would you say that that's accurate? You know, being in the middle of it, in the thick of it. I mean, that's my fan perspective, and obviously my outlook's a little biased, hanging around a guy like David, who's, you know, on top of it, has been on top of it. But would you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree. I say that all the time. You know, especially being part of the union and having conversations with, continue to build that. And the question always comes up, it's like, okay, how do we continue to get stronger? And the main thing is to help our body of players become smarter mentally, physically, psychologically, all these things to help us become better businessmen, better human beings, better husbands, so on and so forth. So if you've been watching it, it's kind of been it's been a trend. You know, it was Michael Jordan came in, and, you know, he was set in terms of how he handled his endorsements and his business deals, you know, and then you start seeing a lot of athletes get money, and then it was like that blinged out era. But I think it was a gradual thing between both sides, I think, too, you know, because I think David Stern putting in that dress code, it kind of helped more than we thought it would. You know, we thought it was kind of putting shackles on us, but we, you know, being African Americans, we always say, you know, we're very creative, no matter what type of rules or laws are put in place. So we were very creative with that. But at the same time, it opened up some business avenues. And I think we took that and it was like, okay, we got to keep furthering it. You got more and more players learning about different things. The thing you do get afraid of is the vanity play, like everybody's investing in tech. So, okay, I'm going to do it too because that person did it. I think we're getting smarter and saying, okay, just don't do it because someone else will do it, but learn about it. And I think you're finding more guys find little niches here and there, things they really enjoy, and they're diving deeper into it. So we're just taking we're taking these passions that we have off the court, taking them vertically, and then we're spreading those concepts horizontally into, other things that we're doing. Like we know how to work hard, we know how to study tape, we know how to implement a regimen, and we can just apply that thing to the same things that we're interested off the court with.
Is that something you think that you've learned on your own, or somebody like that last bit that you talked about, like being able to take what you learned from the game of basketball and sort of the structure that exists inside sports and then apply it to other aspects of your life? Is that something that you sort of figured out on your own, or someone led you that way?
I was a little bit of both. So I was always like super curious. Like I was goofy and playful as a kid, but I was like mad curious. Like I used to get straight A's in school, but like nobody really knew. And I thought it was just funny. Like I just wanted to be smarter than like the white kid next to me. Like, bro, I'm smarter than you, and I'm faster than you. Like I was goofy like that.
Right.
So
right.
like just being curious and wanting to compete at everything and just do well at everything was always there. But like, I got a funny story. Like when I started training with Tim Grover as going into my rookie year. So during the draft, and it's 25 NBA players there, and like I never thought I was gonna play in the NBA until I actually got drafted, and I was like, you hear all the horror stories. Like your career is only gonna last 3 years, 4 years. Like that's the average. So I'm like, man, I need to do whatever it takes to, like, how do you stay around? Like, what's that look like? And I started watching certain guys. Once I saw somebody master something, I was just like, still that, like, okay, that guy's really good at that. Like somebody asked me this funny question, like how'd you know what hard work was? And it was funny because I was like, listen, man, I used to watch Corey Maggette. And people were like, Corey Maggette, like, he's known as one of like the most selfish players, as you know. Like Corey would come off that left wing and he would catch it as hard as he can, go hard right, and run into the whole earth to get to the foul line. And he averaged, 15 to 20 points. And they would be like, but it was selfish or whatever, right? So people surprised when I say his name. But when I watched him work out, I'm like, yo, this dude is an animal. Like he did this one drill like perfect. And I was like, okay, cool. So I like stole that one thing from him. Like, okay, when I approach this drill, I'm doing it just like Corey Maggette. Right. And then you know how he was, like he was very meticulous with his body. Like he would like obsess out about how he looked. So he'd be in the weight room like obsessing out. Like, so I'm like, okay, cool. Like that's how you lift weights. Right, cool. Right. But then I'm watching like somebody else do something, like, all right, cool, I'm gonna take that. And then I would see like Aaron McKee, like how he carried himself on and off the court like a professional. Kevin Ollie, how he carried himself. Like, like me, DUS, me and you talk about that all the time. Like, which vets do you follow? Right. And that can really derail your career or it can help your career take off. So I was like, all right, cool, off the court, that's how I got to act. So it was a little bit of both me being curious, but then at the same time, like following certain guys, certain areas, like, okay, I take this and implement it, take that, implement it. And then before you know it, you kind of well balanced, or you try to be.
So speaking of off the court, in your book, Sixth Man, and I know you've done this in interviews as well, you've talked about the importance of sleep behaviors, recovery, yoga, meditation, these sort of what maybe were once considered alternative methods, but now are becoming more mainstream. How important has that been in elongating your career and also sort of, well, not just physically, but mentally preparing you for games?
Yeah, I think it's helped me like extend my career because most of the time, like somebody just had the best of Darren Williams highlight tape. I looked at it this morning.
Today. I saw that shit today.
Oh my God.
Shit was crazy.
So people was like, who was, there was 4 players. It was Darren, it was Gilbert, BD, and who was the 4th? It was somebody else. Yeah. It was somebody else. But anyway, so I'm like, yo, do y'all know how good Darren Williams was? And then people be like, you see how quick he fell off? And I'm like, listen, people don't understand the mental strain that comes with the game, dog. Like, it's really like tough on you. Like, you don't know what's going on in somebody's life. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know what it is. Like, he still can play. He just was in a different situation. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's a lot of other guys because he's a Hall of Famer to me. But you got guys in the league who are talented, could have 10, 15-year careers, perennial all-stars could have been, but like they just mentally they couldn't, you know, it just didn't work out for them. And you know, it's like it's in our culture. It might be taboo to talk to a psychiatrist or do meditation. Like that's frowned upon where we come from, and you know, just trying to break that mold of if it helps, you should do it. You know, so like meditation, sleep was how I started. You know, like I couldn't sleep in college. It's in a book. The first time I met an agent, and the agent was like, "Yo, I want to talk to you," and I'm like, "For what?" Like I'm clueless.
Right.
Because every day in practice, coach is like, "Andre, you gotta get better." So I'm thinking I ain't that good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, man, like man, I must really be weak. I remember one time coach got on me after I had a triple-double, and my teammate was like, "Yeah, you had a triple-double." I'm like, damn, I did? Like, I thought I had played the worst game of my life.
Right.
You 19 years old, you don't know. But then you outside, I got an agent telling me I'm good. I'm like, what you mean I'm good? Like, I don't understand. So at the end of the day, you figure it out, like, oh, coach want me to stay.
Right.
You don't know, you don't know that.
Right.
So that's when I started having those sleep problems. Was in college. Like I wasn't going to sleep.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to bed at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., waking up at 7:30 to go to class or go to practice or lift weights or whatever. I just wasn't sleeping. It just became regular. So until I got to the Warriors, so that's like 8-9 years down the line.
Right.
I'm going to bed later, and it's just regular. So
Right.
I was like, man, let me see what this is about. So I just did a study on sleep, and I'm like, whoa. And then I did something with this tech company, Jawbone, and they was tracking my sleep, and then they came back with the numbers. I didn't even know they was doing it. How my stats were coming off of games where I got the proper amount of sleep versus the games where I didn't get the right amount of sleep. And it was like night and day.
Right.
Like, so from there, I just took that and was like, all right, cool. What other ways can I get better? Like off the court like that. The food thing was a big thing. Like you saw how I ate, you know what I'm saying? Like, cool, like these are the foods you got to eat. These are the foods I need to stay away from, changing your whole diet. And then from there, it was the meditation thing came along with the yoga. So I started doing yoga. You know, I heard Joe Johnson was doing yoga because he's not like a super athletic dude, but he's still getting it done. I'm like, Joe, what you doing? He's like, I do yoga. So I was like, all right, cool, let me do some yoga. And then in yoga, you don't realize it, but you meditating in yoga. So I'm like, all right, cool, let me dive into this meditation. And then before you realize, you're like, yo, these things are needed for more than just basketball. Like they really help you in life. And, you know, especially when you got family, like people don't understand how hard it is to be an athlete and be a family. Like I was just joking with my wife, and you know how, you know, our wives are like, yo, y'all go out and put y'all on the court, but take the kid to school one time, right? we always laugh about that, right? So she was just like Giselle, who make just as much money as Tom Brady. You know, Tom Brady was on Howard Stern joking like, yo, man, my wife is like, yo, you got to do better at home. I seen you like master football. You the greatest quarterback all the time. But I want you to put 1% of that into these kids. You ain't never took the kids to school. So like people don't understand, like, man, it ain't just waking up in the morning and you just going having fun, hooping, doing whatever you want, partying. Like you got to be balanced, man, and their mind has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I remember, like my first 8 years was spent in New Orleans, and so I didn't have any of the amenities, none of the extras, and it wasn't until I got to Indiana that, you know, I realized you know, I guess that health prep, you know, where you prepare your body before you get injured and not necessarily worry about it after you get injured. And like you, I mean, it was like 8 years in, you know, and that was something that I thought extended my career because, again, I had 8 years where, and ultimately at the end of that 8 years resulted in a torn ACL, you know, where I just didn't know any better. Like, we had a conversation with BD the other day, and, you know, he was with the Hornets when I was a rookie, and it was like, yo, you don't know that this is not how things are supposed to be until you get somewhere where there's a little bit more expertise involved, more science involved. When I got to Indy, they didn't have a stem machine. They didn't have no stem machine where you hook you up, and that's not a part of their thing. They're real medical people, hands-on, you know, doing manipulations, preparing your body, you know, to not get hurt. You know, so it was it was night and day. And so I understand what you're talking about, because you almost feel like you get deprived. Like when you get somewhere and they have all this information, you almost get angry a little bit. Like, damn. I felt like that when I got the year I went to San Antonio, and then ultimately, the 2 seasons with the Warriors, man, it was like you realize all of the things you didn't have, all of the layers of support that exist in certain organizations that don't exist in others. And the mental health piece, again, was something that maybe year 9 or 10, and that was the midst of those conference finals runs with the Pacers, where the Pacers even were like, man, y'all need somebody to talk to, because y'all, we was so hectic trying to win. We'd be inside just ready to rip each other's heads off. You know what I'm saying? And that, they introduced the mental health people to us, like, yo, man, y'all need to talk to him. Some of you guys need to and it helped. It reasonably helped. My last couple years with the Warriors, man, I tell people all the time, man, like meeting Chelsea and having a couple years with her, man, really helped me adjust for this life after basketball, because, she caught me. Remember I told you, man, I was about to be a diabetic. If it wasn't for her, I'd have been over the edge.
Right.
She caught it, like, interjected all types of stuff into my life, but it was like, damn, like you gotta be in those environments where those people are, you know what I'm saying, in order to realize you're really missing this integral part of your life. And then ultimately it translates into other parts of your life, because I use like the technique she taught me in terms of keeping my back together and stuff. I haven't had any back issues in like 3 years, but it's an everyday thing. And I ain't playing no ball no more, but I'm still maintaining what she taught me, you know what I mean? So that's really, really valuable, man. What do you think from an overarching standpoint, man? What do you think about what does it cost you to invest in these other parts of yourself?
If it's cost me, I think it's cost me in terms of, it can cost you in terms of perception. And I've seen that happen before, where there's this bright young mind, right? This guy's he might be in year 3 or 4, right? And he's the next one. Like, he's the one where he's got the bright mind and he can take it to the next level. You're talking about bees, he can take it there.
Right.
With his
I know you're talking about.
Right. So I don't want to say his name because
I got you. I know you're talking about.
I've heard people say in that ownership, however you want to title him, say like, why does he have all this other stuff going on? Like, why won't he just won't focus on basketball? Like, what?
Right. The dude's brilliant.
I'm like, are you serious? Like, they were like, he was dead serious. Like he was telling me, like, this guy was telling me, like, yeah, this is what the ownership is saying. Like, they say he's got too much going on outside the game. They're worried if he's focused on basketball. I'm like, and that's how we were taught when we came into the league. Like, you need to maximize your window in this league because you never know when it's going to end. And it's funny because I had a conversation with a Hall of Famer, and he was like, it was Lonzo Mourning, and Zoe was like, oh, I had access to all this stuff, this real estate down here in Miami. Like, this area right here, like the art district, this area. He was like, man, I could have bought all this. I had the means. He was like, I just didn't know, because all we were taught was like, make the most of your career. Like, don't focus on this stuff later. And like, that stuff would resonate with me. And I noticed, like, I have conversations with some people, like even Bob Myers, I would laugh with him sometimes. He was like, man, sometimes it seems like, you got a lot of stuff you focusing on. And then it's like, is he focused on basketball? He's like, but then you'll have a big game. I'm like, Bob, I'm always ready. Like, I'm focused on this. Like, I'll be in the gym late at night, just look at my key card.
Right.
And like, don't just guess. Like, it's right. The information is there to see if I'm engaged or not. Like, I'm always engaged. It's just like, I just think outside the box sometimes, and I don't think they're used to it. So when you're doing something they don't understand or they don't know how to receive it.
Right. Gotcha.
Once they don't know how to receive it, and then it's just like building trust. So like, I've been in a few positions, like I got to prove to the coach that, like, bro, I can still play. Like, I'm still good. Right. And it's like, you miss a shot and they're like, why'd you shoot that? And it's like, oh shit, I got to give me 10 games, man. All right, 10 games, I'll show you. And then it's like, oh snap, like, you can do that. I'm like, bro, I work on my game. I just have other stuff that I'm doing as well. Like, you can do both, because end of the day, you know how we athletes work. Like, we only practicing an hour or 2 a day. Like, 3 hours max. You get an hour to prep, hour to lift, hour basketball, 20 to 30 minutes to compress down, you go home. What you gonna do with the rest of your time?
Right.
They
that
like
was always
go.
my argument, bro. It wasn't enough. It was too many hours in the day to just say, okay, I'm gonna just do basketball. It's too much to do. Too much going on in the world as well.
Wouldn't you? You talked about it in the context of mental wellness and physical wellness. Wouldn't you make the argument as well that those that are satisfied in the other facets of their life are ultimately going to play better on the court?
Yeah. So I was having that conversation with another player like 2 weeks ago. We were talking about some this up and coming tech company, right? They got some cool stuff going, right? And we were talking, and he was like, "Man, you seem like you keep it busy." I'm like, "Listen, man, like you got to be able to step away from the court when you want to, not when you have to, right?" I know the guys who are going to struggle when they retire. Like I can see it in their faces because they have no identity outside of the game, and then like they need that interview, or they need to talk to the media, or they have to have a purpose in terms of, oh, I got to go to work today, or I got to lift because I got to be ready to play this guy. It's like you can hear it in their tone when they're talking. Like you could be talking about potato chips, you'd be like, oh shit, like that guy's going to struggle. And that's one thing I try to do is just like I let any teammate that I ever have know, like, all right, the first question I ask, what are your interests? You read books, man? Like pick up a book. Like I was joking with one of my rookies in Miami, like, what books you read? He was like, I don't really read books like that. I'm like, oh, that ain't no problem at all. Cause like, you're 19, 20, I'm gonna get you there. Like, and I got to slow walk them. I just got to slow walk them. But at the end of the day, man, that mind space, like if you don't have an identity when you're done, that's where you get the horror stuff. Yeah, you're gonna struggle bad. Like, and then a lot of the times those are the guys that suppress it. And they won't speak out on it. Like they won't get help about it.
Right.
And that makes it worse. So I think we are getting better, but we got to continue to just like drill down on it.
What do you say to a young guy because I think there's a two-way street here, because you and I both know like there's a certain level of engagement that you want from a player, but then you also want guys to be like, yo, man, you gotta get some other interests. But you don't want guys just doing any random damn thing. Like, how do you help distinguish, like, this is something that will help you and be valuable for you, as opposed to something that'll be detrimental to you and it just filling up your time, like, going out or doing, taking part of some of the things that may lead you down a different path.
So I've learned to like be very patient, because like I've had teammates where I got frustrated. I was like, bro, man, I'm trying to help you. Like, I'm wasting my time. Like, don't waste my time, bro. Like, what you think I'm doing here? And I've had teammates be like, man, all you do is read. And I lost patience with them. But what I've learned is to take it slow. Like Duncan Robinson, like he picked up on it like right away. So like Duncan Robinson, I'm like, yo, let's roll. Let's go grab something to eat. Or if I got a conversation with a tech company, I'll just shoot him the information right away. Like, boom, check this out. Like, you ain't got to invest. Like, don't invest yet, but just read on it. And he like, boom, I'm with it. Or I had him do a partnership. He like, boom, I'm with it. Like, he get it, just because that's who he is. He went to Michigan, whatever. Or if somebody else, like as you know how music is, like I'll be in the locker room like, what are we listening to? Right. So them guys, I'm like, okay, cool. I got to slow play him. Like, I don't want to turn them off too quick and be like, yo, read this whole book. It's 400 pages. Like, I wouldn't do that. Now I know, like, all right, cool. Let me do something he like. Then I'm going to bring him into my world. And then we just slowly figure it out. And then, like, I've learned that they respect that a little bit more. So it just all depends on the person. Once they know you care and you're trying to help them, like, they're very receptive. And you just got to think of creative ways to just, think of parallels that they understand what you're talking about. Because they don't have to do what you're doing, but they just got to think of something else that's going to fulfill them outside the game.
So, Andre, I got a little bit different question for you. You played at the University of Arizona, obviously, a major program. And I'm sure to some extent you probably still follow college basketball. Where do you land on the idea of compensating college athletes?
Well, obviously I'm all for it. I've been in college and I struggled before. Like that documentary just came out. The scheme was pretty interesting. And contrary to popular belief, like I didn't get $1 in college, like nothing. Like, I think I got in trouble one time because I took a job my freshman year. And you're not supposed to have a job as an athlete, a scholarship athlete.
That's right, yeah.
Wow.
So they took it out of my scholarship check or the stipend check, whatever you get. They took it out of that. Bro, I was pissed because I spent it. Obviously, I blew it.
Right.
So I was broke for like a good week and a half, dog. I'm struggling. I'm like, I got a job. Like, I actually went and got a job. But obviously, players should get paid. The trick is just like, They don't want to. It's too much money involved
Right.
for them to relinquish that, and it's easy to me. Like it's quite simple, man. You set up a trust for every player where, all right, they got too many calculations. Like they can calculate how much each death with the economy being shut down cost. Like they calculated that. They said it's like $240 million of economic loss per death would be in the economy being shut down. Like, do you figure that out? And you mean tell me you can't figure out how much to pay these kids?
Right.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's just that they don't want to. But
yeah,
right.
man. But all you gotta do is, man, listen, man. You set it up for the kid. All right, you come here. Maybe you set it up for a kid that he can get endorsements, or someone can use a likeness, or somebody said something interesting to me. Like the school can have a contract with Nike, but the kid can have a contract with, Anta or any shoe company, and the kid can wear whatever shoe he wants to wear. If the school's willing to pay, or if the company's willing to pay that kid who says that's wrong, like that works to me. The issue you have is I saw something where these football and these basketball programs are payroll the entire athletic department.
Right.
And that's where you have Title IX comes in, and you got to have equality the board with sports, and then you're not going to have as much funding for the other sports. So you got to figure all these things out. But at the end of the day, they still figure it out where at least the kids are getting something where you set up the trust, the kid gets it. If they turn professional, they get it when they turn professional, or they get it when they get the degree and they graduate. So you make sure kids are getting their school, getting their degrees, and then it's already set before. It's just simple.
And how important do you think it is in that period of that college window for these athletes to get a more meaningful education than they're potentially getting right now, especially as it relates to that sort of off the court preparedness? You talked about financial literacy earlier, public speaking, social media management. These guys are targets almost in a way from AAU on now.
Right.
And so providing that sort of platform and opportunity.
That's a great question, because kids go to college, like the kids, he's been playing with computers, software. So like if you go to school to become an engineer, right? I mean, they got all the programs for him to be an elite engineer and all the tools to be a successful engineer. But they don't have, they have, some schools have these programs, but they're like, get your easy A, the GPA boosters.
Right.
The GPA booster program. It's like, no, if these kids come to school to play ball, and like if you go to Arizona, you go to Kentucky, if you go to any of these schools, North Carolina, you go to Duke. On the basketball team, half those guys are going pro. So put them in the professional athlete programs where they're taking classes on financial literacy. They learn how to do taxes.
Right.
They're learning how to. They're taking sociology classes. They're taking psychology classes. So they're learning how to identify with other human beings. They know how to do interviews. They know how to identify somebody that's trying to scheme or get over on them. Not that you can catch any of those guys, but you at least know what it looks like. Like it's not that hard. It's just our capitalist system teaches all of us to get more and keep it. So we don't want to release it. That's the power in that too. There's a lot of power in that, man. And D West, you and I talked about that. It's just knowledge is power. And you look at movies like what's the movie with Remy and Ice Cube? Higher Learning. Right. You like it's funny. Like it's like you look at the Spike Lees or anybody that's putting that information out there, and they put it in their films, and we looking at the killings, and it's like, no, there's a bigger meaning to it. So we just gotta. There's a lot of power in our talents, and other people are milking it out of us, and we getting there though. We gonna get there. We just gotta keep pounding it in our guys' heads to just keep paying attention.
I went to the retired players meeting last summer, I think, and I just was curious as to what the retired players sort of looks like, and there's a huge gap. So there's literally barely anybody who's retired in the last 8 years there. Right. And it's mainly guys who've been retired for like over 10, 12, 15 years from that future generation. Well, one of those guys came up to me and he was like, look, man, the truth of it is you guys have been a bit smarter about your off-the-court business than we have. And, the goal, I think, is to continue that trend with the players that are coming beyond us, just keeping them or allowing them to know that you can be informed about other aspects of what's going on out here in the world. You don't have to necessarily depend on other people's words to sort of get an understanding. You can have some confidence to go out and find out information for yourself. Because ultimately it's going to enrich you holistically, your whole person. And like I said, I've made more relationships. I made more relationships in the NBA as a sort of as someone who is himself, right? I never had to like try to fit into this box.
Right.
And people have, and it surprises me sometimes, like who looks at me or who knows me or who's like watching up, keeping up on me.
Right.
When I retired, like literally, like I retired, the first or second text I got was from Brad Stevens, and I was like, her?
Right.
And it
right.
was like, dude wrote me this huge text, and it basically was like, man, I've been a fan of yours for years. Stay in touch. I thought, it was, and he and I have actually communicated some, and it's weird. I'm like, man, but you never know who's watching. You never know who's appreciating you from afar, from a distance. And I think if you're one-sided, if you're not able to sort of show multiple parts of yourself, you limit yourself.
For sure.
So I think that's an important piece for young athletes to take, especially from a guy like you, right, who's had the on-court success, having the off-court success, but you don't necessarily fit into that. He looks like this other guy, or he, thinks like this other guy, because you have the ability to do it. You take pride in being able to find those things for yourself.
And I think that's the issue. We go to our youth sports. Like, we've been trying to tackle that for forever. I got a close friend who's high ranking in the Naval Academy, and he's like a leadership type. So he'll work for like Google or something in their leadership role and teamwork and all that stuff. Like, black dude too, right? Smart dude, love him to death. And he's like, yo, man, you gotta get these athletes to say they money. And obviously I'm on game mode still. It's the game alarm. But yeah, he's like, you gotta get athletes to do this, do that. I'm like, listen, man, the problem is that by the time we get a hold of them, like the ones that make most of the money brainwashed, because somebody then picked them up at 12 years old and said, let me run all your endeavors and you just handle the basketball side. So like, we got to figure out a way to get to our youth sports too, because now we're trying to build these. That's another part of the mental part too, is like, we're building these athletes saying, all right, you're going to be a professional basketball player, and I'm going to live in this house, and you're going to live in this house, and we're going to do these things, and you training them at 6 a.m. every day. And this is from like age 10, man. I'm seeing like the best 8-year-old in the country. I'm like, yo, for one, you're 5'2", and his mom's 4'11". He's not going to play in the league. Right. And the ones that do make it, like, I know there's one kid, he's going pro, man. Like, but I know some factors that are going to derail him. And I'm like, yo, man, he's going to struggle, man, because this person got a hand, and this dude's going to fall in love with the game. And then when they fall in love with the game, it's like the game was all they knew this whole time. And when I see the kid, I'm like, what you doing in school? What kind of grades you get it? Don't bullshit me, man. Like, you got to get your grades up. Like, basketball easy, that's going to come. But you get this right, you're going to be a way better basketball player. Try to tell him something like that, because I know, like, man, his situation with those involved, they're gonna try to take advantage of it, and he gonna be lost, and then he ain't gonna like basketball, and then when you ain't got basketball, you don't really have nothing else.
How is it important is it for young people to work on decision making, right? So you're talking about, and for those who don't understand what Andre's talking about, I think you're talking about when kids are identified young. You can see a kid that's 10, 12, 13 years old, and then all of a sudden people start attaching themselves to this kid with the expectation that this kid is going to continue on, blow up. When he blows up, they're going to be a part of the entourage, the team that gets a piece of this this pie that this kid is chasing. So how important is it to teach kids the importance of making good decisions, and how do they start making those decisions, about who they hang out with, who they allow into their circle, and particularly when mom and dad are in the dark.
Right. So that's a really good question, because like I made mistakes, but I wasn't like highly touted. So like, nobody really see it. Like, just goofy kid stuff. Like, there's a difference between being a 16-year-old, you playing around and like we egg houses, do goofy stuff like that, as opposed to like, you got to be careful. Like, you get in the car with the wrong OG, because the OG want to help you out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
One thing kids need to know, like, nothing's for free. And I think like that's not, like, you and I, we know, like, you told me the story about, a famous person coming up to you, like, do you want to work for me on the side when you were young? You're like, my mom said I can't do this. Like, we were raised like that. Like, I was raised the same way. Mom was like, if my mom's finding out about this, I might die. Like, I'm afraid. But, like, these kids are like coming up. It's like they're being told like, you're going to the league, you ain't really got to worry about that. And then they start really believing it. So like they start taking things and start accepting stuff, not knowing it's gonna come back on you, man. Like you're gonna be guilted in this relationship for the rest of your life. Like,
right,
you about to enter into a 30-year relationship.
right.
And it's gonna be like, so like this is like real lives being affected, because you're gonna have to, it's gonna be some hard, like you're gonna have to cut it off the hard way at some point, or you're just gonna be guilted and taking care of another human being who really has no care or interest for you. So it's all about like the decision making on that point, but at the same time, patience. Like patience is like, I think that's an overlooked word, very underrated. People don't put respect on it. So like I learned that is like I didn't really take no loans as a rookie. You know what I'm saying?
No,
Like,
right. I knew, right?
I ain't take no money from no agents. Like I ain't take no money. Like, for one, I didn't know like I was that good, so I wasn't expecting nothing, you know. So I didn't ask. But looking back, I'm like, man, I ain't take no money from nobody. Like I grinded. Like I didn't need no big house. I didn't need 3 cars. Like I was just happy to be hooping. And then when I finally got it, it was a more of appreciation for it. But when these guys are getting it young, they just get accustomed to that lifestyle, which is going to hurt them. Or like, you know, they're going to get involved with the wrong person who's going to take advantage of them. And then eventually it's going to come back to haunt you. And that's what patience is all about. Just like, wait, when it comes, it's supposed to come, man. Like just enjoy, like I always tell kids, man, enjoy being 13, enjoy being 16, even enjoy being 19. Like tell a rookie in the league, like, man, just enjoy. You young, you ain't got no kids, you can go out and have fun. Like you don't need nothing, all this crazy stuff. And everybody know how much money you got already. You ain't got to show them you got it. That's the other one too. Like, man, just be patient. Like, everybody know how much money you got. Like, why you got to prove to me that you can afford that watch? You really can't afford it, first of all. So just wait on it.
And I would say, you know, right now that's magnified, the fact that players need to account for these sorts of things, you know, because even the NBA can be interrupted unexpectedly. You got to be prepared for that.
And that's
go ahead. No, I was gonna ask you something about your health, but go ahead.
No, I was just saying 2 things he touched up on. The first one was like that the check thing. Like we're going through it right now. They about to shut this. They shut it down, and you know the league is very, very smart, and the league is very good at putting information out there. So they're like, the NBA is going to pay their players on April 15th.
Right.
People are like, look, are they doing right by their players? It's like, listen, man, we played 80% of the games already, but we only got 40% of our checks.
Right.
What industry do you know where you work and did your job and they going to negotiate how much of that money and when they disperse the work that you already did?
Right.
So I've been trying to explain that. They was like, man, the NBA still paying you. Are you still getting your checks? I'm like, nah, man, that was from work I already did 2 or 3 months ago, dog. Like, they just catching up, dog. I'm on a yearly schedule. So we laugh about that. But at the same time, to be serious is like, you know, I always look at our, you know, being with the union, it's my duty to look out for the best interest of the players. You know, the league is getting younger and younger. We got more guys in the league that are in the first 4 years of their contracts, which are smaller contracts. Right. So, you know, they might be more likely to live check by check, you know, just because they're on smaller contracts and you know, they're trying to figure everything out. So, you know, those guys might be affected, and we got to keep that in mind, just making sure that our body is good in terms of financially, and missing money might hurt them a little bit more than you know, some of the other guys.
Right. And it's not just this season. I mean, to talk a little bit about the salary cap and your role within the union. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously with this lost revenue from work stoppage, as well as, you know, what happened at the beginning of the season, you know, now you could be looking at a flattened cap for the next couple of years. So guys that might have been looking at escalating contracts.
Exactly.
Now you may not have that. The market may not be there for you. You know, like a guy like Tristan Thompson, had he been a free agent 2 years ago, probably would have signed a $20+ million a year deal. Exactly. Now you're looking at a guy who is maybe a mid-level exception if he doesn't do a sign and trade with the Cavs.
Exactly. Or he had, you know, a lot of guys are going to do 1-year deals. People don't realize, you know, some people may not realize how important the playoffs are. You know, when we talk about the playoffs, a lot of guys are like, we don't get paid for the playoffs. You know, the owners make a bulk of their money off the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And I always rebuttal that by saying, no, the playoffs actually are the largest marketing spend in terms of advertisements for the league sponsors. And, you know, the finals bringing so much revenue on that end. That in turn raises BRI, which in turn increases the salary cap into the following season. So it's almost like it's almost future income. And you got to look at it that way. Yep. And I think that's why you hear a lot about the possibility of playoffs, because the playoffs are very important. And even the owners want a higher cap, because the owners always talk about, we want to be able to spend and compete. And then when you got owners spending, when the salary cap comes in a little bit lower, you're going to have more teams. You're going to have more teams over the tax. So there's incentives on all the way around, which is why I'm pretty optimistic about, how the NBA works with the union works with the NBA in terms of, making sure that we work really well together to take care of each other.
I would say that the NBA and the NBPA, I mean, you guys are sort of the gold standard right now within sports, with how you guys collectively work to make the game better, because it is in the best interest of both parties, rather than an NFL and an NFLPA where it's a very adversarial relationship, which maybe sometimes stifles the growth of the league.
I think you have two people in leadership roles that don't have egos. I think
Right.
Adam Silver's very forward thinking, and Michelle Roberts, she's not the normal, okay, I'm running the show and don't try to screw us over. I think they work very well together. They have very open lines to communication to one another, and they explore every avenue to make sure that both sides are in agreement. And the best negotiations are when both sides feel like they didn't lose, and I think that's the goal that they look at when they go to have an issue or try to overcome something that's like coming up right now.
So, Dre, I got two off-the-cuff questions. The first one is just generally, man, I call these fail-up moments. I think that we all have moments in our lives, in our journeys, particularly NBA guys, like guys who have made that step, right? We had a moment where we came up short or we failed, but ultimately it was like a fail-up moment, because at that very low moment, something clicked. What was that moment for you? If you have one that you're willing to share with our listeners.
I feel like I've had a good amount of those.
All right.
No, I feel like, because I always look at them differently. Like I read a lot of different things, and it's always like failure is not responding when something didn't go your way. You know what I mean? Like something like that's. And I was talking to my trainer yesterday. Was it this morning? We were boxing early this morning, and I was like, the problem with a lot of people is they have, like, I have a problem with people who are criticizing an athlete and be like, if I had that much money, I would never be out of shape. And my thought is, as a human being, you should never be out of shape. That says a lot about you more than the athlete.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that blows my mind. So in terms of, I'm talking about, just you go back to your question in terms of failing, like, I never looked at it as like failing. It was just like, I think it was just like, I was just happy to be in that situation, and I look forward to it. Like, man, I can't wait to be in some pressure. Like, that's because I put the work in. So I was like, man, I worked my ass off. Like, shoot, I hope I get the opportunity, because what other reason? Like, what's the point of working out hard if you ain't gonna be in a situation where you can prove that you've been working hard?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think in college, that helped me a lot. Oh, my whole freshman year of college was actually hilarious looking back. Luke Walton used to bust my ass every day in practice.
Okay.
I'm like, this slow ass white dude cannot move, dog. I'm way faster than him. He always spraining his ankle. He always was like hurt or something. Like, but in practice, I'm like, how is he getting positioned like this?
Right.
Like, how is he making this pass? Like, people always ask me, you got good court vision. I learned how to pass watching Luke Walton. I'm like, yo, this dude is incredible. Somebody always open when he passed to him. When he passed to them, they always open. So, like, he used to have me in a block in the post. I could not guard him in the post. I'm like, yo, this dude weak as hell. Like, I don't see why everybody thinks he's so good. And I still didn't get it. But then after my freshman year, and then when I got to the league, I got it. I'm like, that's what Luke was doing. And that's why he played for so long. And he played a long time in the league. Like, who else with his athletic abilities? Like, how many dunks did he have in his career? Like 4?
Right.
6'8". But, like, he got a couple chips. And, like, he actually contributed. Like, he wasn't just on the team. Like, Phil Jackson put him in the game. Like when Steve Kerr put me in the game, hey, man, get us the float, man. Get the ball. Phil Jackson put in Luke Walton with Kobe Bryant. Like, yo, get him right.
Right.
I think, like, just failing every day to somebody, I had no idea why he was out playing me. Like, not like outworking me, just outplaying me. I didn't get it, But my sophomore year, like I took like leaps and bounds in terms of my basketball knowledge and
Right.
you know, that kind of like that point forward skill set.
Yeah, that we all have those moments. I just think that when people can hear them from different people, particularly young people are constantly in this fail moment. Like things are just, for some guys, things just aren't working. And I think it's always good for them to hear that people have gotten through different moments, you know, like again, a whole year of having to match up with somebody in practice that is getting the best of you, but it didn't divert you or knock you off path.
And you know what that helped me with though? And I want to expand on that. So like Lou Olson was like the king of like fundamentals, right? And these kids, you take it for granted. Like we would spend 30 minutes a day on ball handling. You know what I'm saying? Like when did you ever work on your ball handling skills in the league? Like in practice?
Not till I got to the Warriors.
Right. But other than that, you don't work on your ball. But in Arizona, every day it was like that was the worst part of practice was the ball handling. I'm like, yo, this how it hurt to dribble.
Right.
I've never had handles like I had in college.
Right.
And like this goes back to talking about Luke Walton. It made me appreciate those fundamentals drills, like pivots, the pivots, all the ball handling drills. You know, all the I'm gonna square you up, I'm gonna jab you. We had certain fundamentals at Arizona, like we can only drive middle. You couldn't drive baseline. You couldn't spin because once you spin, you expose yourself to the defense where you can't see them. Like little stuff like that. In my freshman year, I'm a goofy freshman. I'm like not taking that serious. I'm like, what? And I'll spin on purpose. But then like this white dude killing me every day, and then you start figuring out like, oh, he only drive middle, or if he do go baseline, this is why.
Right.
Now, because I'm watching him because he's killing me. I'm like, oh, that's where the fail turned into like, okay, I got to do this, and I got to do this. And then when I got to the league, I started seeing 10-year vets that couldn't do shell drill.
Right. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay, that's why we was waking up doing shell drills early in the morning.
Okay. Right. They don't know the basics. Right. That's good.
Yep.
All right. So the last thing I got, man, early 2000s, I was getting out of college. The whole mindfulness routine system thing started coming, and I'm somebody that for a lot of years, man, I didn't get into a legit routine. Wasn't until like maybe year 3 or 4 in the NBA that I seriously got a routine down. But mainly it was how I was starting my day. So you know, just for our listeners, man, what if any morning routine or one thing you do in the morning to start your day?
And that's hilarious. You asked me that question. I just finished reading 5 a.m. Club. I finished it like 2 weeks ago, right? I read it in like a week and a half. Like I got through that.
Club, okay.
5 a.m. Club, right? He wrote like the monk who sold his Ferrari. He wrote that book too. So 5 a.m. Club is like a worldwide bestseller. So he breaks down how your whole morning, the first hour of your morning should be. Your first hour dictates the rest of your day. And I tried it like once or twice. I wasn't waking up at 5 a.m., but I was just applying it to waking up at 7 a.m.
Right.
Man, it is spot on. So he's saying like as soon as you wake up, you should have workout clothes on the floor next to your bed. Because he says sleep in workout clothes, but I don't believe in that. Because Ariana Huffington, she has a sleep thing she does. I invested in her Thrive company. It's on wellness. You can't sleep in workout clothes because your body's going to think you're going to work out while you're sleeping. Like, you know how the mind works. It's a crazy thing. Yeah. So your workout clothes should be on the floor. As soon as you wake up, throw them on and work out 20 minutes. Boom. You work out anything. You just work out 20 minutes. Boom. And it talks about how it works into your endorphins, and it gets the mind like in a state where you just waking up, right? So you work out for 20 minutes. Then the next 20 minutes is all like meditative or spiritual. You know, maybe you read the Bible or whatever it is you read, and you do a little prayer, and then you're just like meditating. You're thankful for being awake, and you're just like, you're coming down from that high you just got, and there's endorphins from working out, and you're just being thankful, like reflecting for 20 minutes. And then the next 20 minutes is like you writing down, you planning out your day, like this is what I'm accomplishing today. You're looking over your schedule. You're doing all these things. The book breaks it down, right? And it talks about you don't look at your phone, you don't look at an email, you don't look at no text, none of that during this time. Because they say when you look at the news or a text as soon as you wake up, it actually depresses you, because most of the time you're looking at the news, there's always something bad, or it takes your mind. It talks about your mind only has so much output that it can have. That's how you get tired as the day goes on. You know, people need that coffee break 4 times a day. They get tired because their brain is working so hard. You work out as soon as you wake up, it makes your brain bigger. It's called neuroplasticity. Like, so your brain can actually grow. Your brain's actually a muscle. Broke it down. Like, it's like you working your hamstring, you building your hamstring. You can build your brain. So when you work out in the morning, you're actually building your brain to be able to take more in so it doesn't get as tired. When you get to work and you start bringing it break the whole thing down. I'm like, yo, this book is on point. So now, like, on days where I don't do nothing or I wake up and I'm like, it's like 8, 9 o'clock, I feel like shit. I'm like, man, I just wasted the day. It's only 9 o'clock, but I'm like, man, I done wasted my day because I ain't do what I was supposed to do. But it talks about you just build on 1% every day. Because it takes, I think you said it takes 6 weeks to build a habit or something like that.
Yeah.
And 6 weeks to build a habit. So you're waking up at 6 a.m. Once you get that, it's ingrained forever. Like, you don't break it. And then he said, once you get that habit in, you start another habit for 6 weeks. And then, like, it just says you incrementally get better 1% every day. And people are like, that ain't that much. But over a year, you better 365% over 1 year.
Right.
Like, that book was cold, man. I'm like, yo, this book is it. Yeah, it was really good.
So, Andre, I got one more question for you to put a positive spin on everything that's going on right now. What are you most looking forward to doing when we're allowed to go back out again?
Man, like, that's it. I'm glad you said that. I just got my golf clubs yesterday, like a new set yesterday, and I can't even use them. I be swinging in the house, man. I bought a net, and like I just be hitting. My 2-year-old played golf, so
really,
yeah, she got it. Like she got a real swing. Yeah,
nice.
Our new CMO Wendell Haskins, he's used to work at the PGA and actually has his own golf tournament too. So I bet you guys might have some things in common on that front. But
I knew I seen you before too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why.
He's also around the tech space. He's always at the tech summit, the All-Star game.
Yep.
So, but Andre, really appreciate you coming on. If you haven't already, you got to check out The Sixth Man, Andre Iguodala. Definitely a good read. And last thing I'll show you, just because I found it cleaning out my mom's house in the winter, or helping her clean up her house. I have a hologram rookie card of yours from Arizona that I happened to just find in a box of stuff my brother and I had. So, but thank you again for coming on.
Thanks, Dre. I appreciate you guys, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man.